You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up the better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If HazbinHotel meets JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of WriteAnon on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. The first aid room was clean and brightly lit, with every stylistic holdover from the rest of the house blending somewhat jarringly with a sterile, medical aesthetic. The medicine cabinet was bordered with baroquely carved wood moldings, the examination table was dark glossy leather and its legs skirted with red and black tassels. Overhead was a medical lamp done up to resemble some manner of chandelier. Kira decided that he didn't particularly care for the merging of styles. Razel examined the wound in Kira's shoulder, a long, sunken oblong crater in his flesh, as though it had been doused in acid. His knee was no better. Dazzle shone a light on it and made dissatisfied grunts, shaking his head. Why are the groundskeepers here? Kira hissed as Dazzle prodded his knee a little too hard with a hoof. You learn to patch up just about anything working in the Magna household. Charlie explained, patting his hand comfortingly. And Vaggy's good at sewing. So the hand and the cut above your eye seem fairly clean, they should close up pretty quick, Vaggy said as she put the finishing touches on the sutures attaching Kira's hand to his wrist. But your shoulder and knee, it looks like the blade stayed in there for a little while, so there's a lot of damage. Playing cards, said Kira. What? They were playing cards. Vaggy rolled her eye and shook her head. Whatever. Seraphim steel is a holy metal, it purges evil energies. You know, the stuff keeping our bodies together. Those wounds won't heal until we, deride. Dazzle looked up from the knee, his expression somewhat exacerbated. Bah. Right. Vaggy gingerly laid his hand to rest in a hard wrist brace, strapping it all together and wrapping it with a bandage. We need to debride the purified tissue before we can sew you up. I know, said Kira, reaching over to pat her hand. Not the first time I've been tagged by a holy weapon. Vaggy swatted his hand away and got up. Why am I not surprised? I'll go find you something to bite down on. She's joking, Charlie interjected, smiling nervously and batting Vaggy's arm. You're joking, right? We had to get rid of everything stronger than aspirin, remember? Vaggy said, nodding her head at Angeldust, who was peeking into the medicine cabinet. And what's that supposed to mean? Angel said, outraged. I caught you eating flowers because you thought they were poppies. Those weren't poppies. Kira followed the conversation with flat interest before glancing over at Razel and Dazzle. They were grinning maliciously, meaningfully brandishing a melon baller and a skin stapler. A cold sweat broke out on his brow, hand raising to his shoulder. Posies. They were posies that I bought for Charlie's birthday. Ah, Vaggy. Thank you. Ha, 'cause I got a good float off of them. Know where I can get more? His finger gingerly poked the affected area, he inhaled slowly as he activated his primary bomb, his face pulled into a tight grimace. No. I can't. This is hell. Nice flowers are rare, that's why I bought them for her, you butt. Oh, Vaggy, you shouldn't have. Yeah. SHT. Ah, well. They were some really top-notch botanicals. He flipped the SWCH and grit his teeth as the purified tissue crackled and disintegrated, turning gray and evaporating in a puff of smoke, leaving behind a larger but much cleaner lesion. Razzle and Dazzle gawped as he reached down and did the same thing to his knee, slowly and certainly not painlessly burning it away. He sat up, expression harried, and pointed at the trembling goat bois, gesturing at the stapler in their hands and beckoning them over. "Charlie, at least have the backbone to get mad at him for that. I called in major favors to get those flowers and this skinny cocksock eats them." Backbone? And just what is that supposed to mean? Oh. Razzle and Dazzle obediently set about their work with the stapler, almost recoiling from him the second they were done. Kira exhaled and wiped the sweat from his forehead, testing the limits of the staples before deciding to move. He grabbed a triangle bandage and fashioned a messy sling for his newly reattached hand to rest in. As he struggled one-handed with the sling, something surged within him, familiar feelings that had been conspicuously absent for the past few hours: irritation, frustration, and disgust. His true nature was slowly but surely eking its way back in, not yet fully, but inexorably like a waxing tide. He looked over at the squabbling trio. Where were those strange warm feelings from before? Still there, but fading, their content and meaning lost like a sweet dream upon awakening. He recalled risking his life for Angel, being prepared to do the same for any of them, but now he could not for the life of him fathom why. There wasn't a word for what he had felt, at least not one that held any sort of meaning to him now. All he knew was that, at the time, these people mattered more to him than himself. Worse yet, some part of him still felt this way. Confused and frustrated, he slowly and painfully shuffled off the table, careful not to alert them, to draw them away from their precious argument. They so freely engaged with one another, openly expressing their emotions and were, in turn, governed by them. He'd tasted that tonight, filled with some kind of mildly repulsive self-sacrificing sentiment, the echoes of it still present like a particularly saccharine aftertaste. He needed space, to clear his mind, to return to the safe, comfortable confines of his well-insulated former self. But still, some drg-addled part of him fretted over their spat, worried over the raised voices and increasingly hurt tones. That part of him yearned to interject, to involve himself, to help them resolve their differences over, actually, what were they talking about? Ah, come on. We were playing charades. I was a dog, it was in character. There's being in character, and then there's pissing on a houseplant. You think sago palms just grow naturally in hell? I thought it was an erica. Ah well. Never mind. Kira silently hobbled out of the first aid room down the hall. He turned the corner into the foyer, scanning around for that surly drunk. He was at the desk, face down with a more than half-empty bottle of scotch, snoring like a wino in an alleyway. He snuck by him as quietly as he could on his stiff, injured leg. He entered the rec room and gently set himself down on the sofa in front of the widescreen TV, sighing in relief as he took weight off his leg. He reached over and grabbed the remote. The TV snapped on, showing a bespectacled demon seasoning a disembodied leg. He flicked through the channels until something caught his interest. He stopped and turned up the volume. A pretty young demoness, probably some kind of succubus, was reporting on site. Came overpass, where a large explosion has caused damage to the surrounding structure. Although the damage isn't serious, delays can be expected until 10 a.m. Luckily, no one important or famous was injured. Tom Trench leaned forward and chuckled, making eyebrows at the camera. Any word on what caused the explosion, Becky? As of yet, first responders have not determined the cause of the explosion, though there were reports of hooligans throwing explosives into oncoming traffic prior to the main detonation. The identity of these offenders are unknown, but they are assumed to be these bodies you see around me. What bodies? Becky looked down and around, a confused expression on her face. She opened her mouth to speak when the shining blade of a harpoon erupted from her belly. So surprised was Becky that she didn't even scream when a large blue-webbed hand reached up and grabbed her shoulder from behind and the harpoon began to saw its way up through her torso. The low grisly crunch of cleft meat and bone was underscored by the sputtering sizzle of angelic metal corroding demonic flesh. Becky slumped forward, her eyes flashed with magenta light before going blank, a thin trickle of smoke trailing out of her slack mouth. The huge fish demon tore his harpoon free and swung it down in a flashing arc at the camera operator. A splat was followed by a squawk and gurgle and the camera clattered to the ground. Just before the feed cut, a pair of legs strode by, dragging two other limp and dangling bodies. "Damn it!" Katie roared, ripping her earpiece out and throwing it to the ground in disgust. "Those cameras better not be docked from the profit share." "This just in, 2 positions have opened up at channel 666, said Tom, gesturing at the upper right-hand corner of the screen where the channel's web address flashed. "If you're interested, please submit your resume to us online at www.channel 666 news. he/careers/new meet. We'll be happy to have you for as long as you last." Katie reached over and grabbed Tom's tie and yanked it down as hard as she could, smashing his face into the desk with an audible crunch. "We'd have news crews that could protect the equipment if you'd stop selecting the applicants with your PP. Next time I'm sending you out there." "God, they go through reporters there like copy paper," Kira chuckled. "You shred it, wheat," said a hollow, staticky voice to his left. It was a friendly-sounding voice, high-toned and well-heeled with a smooth transatlantic accent. He glanced over the source of the voice, a tall, lanky deer demon in an eye-gouging red and black dress suit. A dark monocle sat playfully on his cheek, held up by his ever-present grin. "Alastor. Mr. Clean." Kira suppressed a flinch. "I'm sorry, have we met before?" "No." Alastor winked at him. "If we had, we wouldn't be wagging chins right now, would we?" "No," said Kira, turning to him and smirking. "Definitely not. You know, I'm of the opinion that most of old Snorkel's dogs are all bark and no bite. But cats don't bark, now do they?" Alastor laughed, a ghoulishly happy sound, and slapped his knee. "So, you've heard of me. Should I be flattered? It was my job to keep tabs on important people. What that means for you now, well, that's not my business anymore. Sounding awfully past tense, there, friend." Alastor's eyes narrowed in fascination. "Planning on relaxing that any time soon?" Kira turned back to the TV. Katie had Tom in a leg lock on the desk while he futilely swung a trench shovel. "No. Not even if the job were offered." Kira smiled and gestured at the variety of bandages festooning his body. "Met some aggressive recruiters just this night, they offered and I let them down as gently as possible." Alastor gave an impressed whistle. "Looks like they were some real headhunters. No offense, kid, but you look like second-hand gum. If you tell me it's raining in Yakushima, I won't get mad." "Rainy place, I take." Alastor said, eyebrow arching. 35 days a month. The radio demon caught a laugh and snapped his fingers. "I didn't know you had a sense of humor." "Only when I'm kidding myself," Kira sighed. "So it's true, then. He's back." Alastor nodded. "Surprised?" "Not really," Kira growled. "If anyone could blight hell itself, it's him. He won't give up, you know," said Alastor. "You're a favorite of his." "True enough. But I'm not going back. He can send his people, he can come himself, I'll never return to that life. I'll kill them all." Kira glared off into the middle distance, his gaze softening as he turned back to Alastor. "So, what are you doing here? You don't seem the type to seek redemption." "Quite right." Alastor shot to his feet, examining his nails. "I'm something of a business partner with our lovely mutual acquaintance. It's all very technical, you wouldn't be interested." "True." Kira slowly rose to his feet. Alastor watched him as he struggled to get up. "I'm not. Whatever you're planning regarding Holy Diver, I'll have no part in it. Whatever you're planning for this place, I'll have no part in that, either. Any and all plans, plots, schemes and conspiracies. No part in it," Alastor finished, tapping his chin in mock contemplation. "Thoughts on rackets?" "Too noisy," Kira said, smirking. "All I want is a peaceful life." Alastor's smile widened, yellow teeth shining. "A peaceful afterlife. Pedant." Kira matched his grin. Let's keep this civil. Shake on it. Kira's hand shot out. Alastor didn't flinch, merely examining the extended hand with something like curiosity, his eyes narrowing as his gaze rose to meet Kira's. You realize you're offering your hand to a dealmaker? I am, said Kira. I'll stay out of your business if you stay out of mine. Kira's hand hung between them, red eyes met red eyes, neither blinking, smiles all around. Alastor reached out with friendly vigor, grasping in a firm but not crushing grip, flares of demonic energy crackling where they met. The handshake held for a moment, their eyes did not wander from each other. A cold glint flashed in Kira's stare. There's one last thing I'd like to know. By all means. Are those? He glanced up at Alastor's head. Ears? Alastor's grin dropped to a smirk, a noticeable crease formed in his brow. Yes. What else would they be? I just heard that they were hair tufts. You know, like pigtails. Tisk. Alastor rolled his eyes and shook his head. No. Rosie just said that at a party and it stuck. Ah, I see. Kira nodded approvingly. Thank you, that's been bothering me for years. So, it's a deal, then. Their hands unclasped and they stood opposite one another, unblinking, smiling at each other. Kira's hand shot up, thumb primed, his eyes narrowing. Alastor coolly observed this bit of theater, eyebrow cocked in a silent challenge. Kira's thumb pressed down. Alastor examined Kira's clenched fist wryly. Only when you're kidding yourself, eh? What can I say, said Kira, lowering his hand. I'd rather not relapse. Alastor took a step back and nodded at Kira. If that's all, I'll be off. Kira nodded in return and watched as the radio demon made his exit. He sat back down on the couch and flipped back to the cooking channel, where Dahmer was presenting his patented finger food. Doesn't look half bad. Hey pal, need a hand? No. Come on. You gotta let me try my hand at it. No. It's scrambled eggs. I could do it with 5 hands tied behind my back. Get out. Alright. Jeez. Cranky but whatif. The bowl shook as he whisked the egg, his shoulder throbbed abominably at the best of times and it outright screamed when he raised his arm more than a hair over his chest. Needless to say, it was proving somewhat difficult to make breakfast this morning. The bowl was beginning to shift on its rims, threatening to spill. He tried to lift his wrist slightly in order to get a more stable angle. His shoulder tensed, an electric jolt of pain raced up the side of his neck as torn muscles spasmed, yanking on steel staples. Kira hissed as his elbow instinctively pulled into his side, bracing the injury. The bowl nearly flew off the counter when a pair of alabaster hands shot in from beside him, scooping the potential disaster up and to safety. He looked over and saw Charlie. She was wearing a white shirt and black pants with suspenders, her long, flowing hair done up in what appeared to be a multi-stage ponytail with at least 3 bands that he could see. Her sleeves were rolled up like they were the other night, when he asked her to. He turned away from her and stared at the stainless steel counter, his own red eyes glaring back at him in the reflection. If he never saw angeldust again it would be too soon. If he ever relapsed, Cherry would gain a profound and revelatory new understanding of explosives. Whoops. Charlie chirped, setting the bowl back on the counter. Almost had an accident there. She stood there and smiled at him, bright and chipper as ever. That she of all people had seen him in such a disheveled state, heard him babble whilst in the grips of some infernal joy, so sure that all was right and well, it burned in the pit of his stomach like acid. The indignity of last night stung him, gnawed at him, and now he bore the wounds and encumbrances of his little foray with humanity, with what these people considered normal. He could have erased some, if not all, of his pursuers that night, but he had hesitated. He held back to protect angeldust of all creatures. And now he was hobbling around, one arm useless, the other crippled, essentially helpless should Holy Diver send any sort of follow-up team to the hotel. And he would, eventually. But he hadn't, not yet, anyway. Why? What are you making? Charlie said, looking into the bowl. Plain Jane scrambled eggs. Of course. Not even Holy Diver was bold enough to endanger the Princess of Hell. Probably. That would buy him some time to recover, to establish a bulwark, to... Here. I'll help. Charlie said, grabbing a salt shaker and moving for the bowl. Just a little dash Anne. Kira's hand shot out and he snatched the salt from her hand. Stop. Charlie flinched and stepped back, surprised at his sudden outburst. Kira set the shaker down on the cooking station with loud bang. Never add salt to eggs before they're cooked. It'll change how they rise and ruin the texture. Oh, said Charlie, an embarrassed blush forming in her cheeks. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Something in her expression dug into him like fish hooks, a hot flush burned across the back of his neck, his hackles raising as a cold sweat formed on his brow. What was wrong with him? He was right, wasn't he? She almost ruined the cornerstone of everyone's breakfast. He corrected her and now he could get back to work. Apologize, he thought to himself, gripped by this strange new feeling. You shouldn't have been so harsh. Apologize. But I was right to. This strange new part of him grunted in assent, but did not relent. True, yes. The eggs would have been ruined, but you snapped at her and she thinks she did something to upset you. She did. The eggs. Don't matter. She didn't know. Apologize, she'll feel better. But. And so will you, he said, with smug self-assuredness. I'm sorry, said Kira, shifting awkwardly. I shouldn't, I've been in a mood. You didn't do anything wrong, I apologize for snapping like that. That's okay, I understand, Charlie nodded, her expression still somewhat hangdog. The fact that she had not returned to her former bubbly disposition was bafflingly unbearable for him. He had to do something to fix this, but what? LP me, he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. Excuse me. He gestured at himself and scoffed in exasperation. I'm a little disadvantaged right now. Could you please help me? She reached out and touched his arm, a sympathetic look on her face. Kira, you don't have to make us all breakfast. Razzle and Dazzle could. He held up his hand, a playful smirk on his face. To be perfectly honest, I'm making myself breakfast. Any extra that's left for all of you is incidental. Charlie giggled, a wonderful, welcome sound. Okay. You walk me through it, I'll be your hands. What are we making, chef? He sighed in relief, perplexed at this sudden elation but thankful to see the end of this abrupt empathetic episode. I was thinking bacon and scrambled eggs with pancakes and a fresh fruit salad. Sounds great. Charlie cheered, saluting. Ready, chef. It was a familiar pain. The nausea, the throbbing headache, the acid reflux, they were all old friends to Husk. Truthfully, the hangover wasn't that bad, all told, but the name that stuck in his head throbbed and pulsed, the dread adding a whole new dimension of unpleasantness to his suffering, Holy Diver. He'd always tried to keep his affiliations with the gang scene to a minimum. What kind of lunatic is in a ripping hurry to get themselves off the second time? Unfortunately, those very same lunatics always seem to find him and strong-arm him into their bullshit, grins McGee chief amongst them. The radio demon was bad enough, with his smug, self-satisfied attitude and jaundiced smile, but at least he seemed content enough with just F with people. All the torture and murder was for a jolly, and getting a kick out of hell was something Husk understood well enough to almost sympathize with. But Holy Diver. Holy Diver was a malcontent. Ambition and lust for power were the rotten foundations of his soul, sitting at the bottom of his very being like a greasy drain in a diner's sink. A gaping hole eating in anything and everything, guzzling all around it, never stopping, never satisfied. At one point he essentially commanded a fifth of the entire city, his name rubbed shoulders with the likes of Vox and Alastor, some brave souls would even privately compare him Lucifer himself. And it wasn't enough, never enough. God, how many people died in the chaos after his extermination? What did it say about a man when murder and mayhem followed him even in death? But that's just the thing, isn't it? He wasn't dead. Word had it he tangled with exorcists every year right up until the end, pummeling angels with his bare fists and stealing their weapons. Unbelievable, but the surplus of seraphim steel he had at his disposal lent credence to this rumor. Everyone in his posse had some kind of angelic bling, making even the unpowered demons in his service a holy terror to fight. The rumor was that he grappled with an exorcist as it was sublimating back to heaven and was gone in a flash of light, never to be seen again. But now he was back, rumors be damned, and he was going to steamroll the feuding factions that had been trying to carve up his empire. Examples would be made, the streets would run red with BLD. Husk shuddered. He'd actually met the guy once, kind of. It was some 20 years ago, in the Azathoth casino uptown. He was playing a particularly smug gecko demon by the name of Poker Face. Aces were high and the stakes were higher. They'd been at it for hours by that point, the other players having long since bowed out. It was now a game of wills for a very deep pot. His hand was good, highish four of a kind with an DMN good kicker to top it off, but there were better hands, and Poker Face was giving every indication that he had won. Ah, but that was the joy of the game, wasn't it? The prick was a MSTR, to be sure. A MSTR card counter, MSTR at sleight of hand, and a MSTR bullshitter. Husk didn't know it at the time, but the stakes were higher than he could have imagined. Poker Face had a power, you see. A particularly demonic ability that allowed him to bind a soul to his will by dint of consent to a game, but only when the game was won. Husk was no slouch himself, but even he could see the fine-toothed gears that spun behind those reptilian eyes. This game was going to be a drawn-out, bare-knuckle brawl. But Husk had an ace up his sleeve and it was one that had Poker Face in a sweat. It was a rather brilliant strategy on his part. Throughout the game he would slowly but surely get so drunk that his tells switched places or new ones took their place. He had been 100 grand behind during the opening salvos of their mano-a-mano match, but when Poker Face called his bluff on what he assumed was his SHT hand tell, he got slapped with a straight flush. After that he was wary and more than a little frustrated, something Husk had taken full advantage of with characteristic tact and finesse. Well? Husk slurred, only slightly playing up how drunk actually he was. Call our fold, I gots places TB. Worried your friends at the drunk tank will miss you. Ride your mall take another customer if I'm late. F you, why no? F you, handbag, YF loser. Your ma calls me Subway. Because you're a fat peffly. 'Cause I got a $5 footlong and she pays me. F your entire F in afterlife, bud. This got a good round of chuckles from the assembled gamblers watching the grudge match. Get F, Husk. That's what your pop says, Tugjin, his chode watchin', me F your ma for booze money. Best DMN bottle a ripple I've ever drank. You better watch it. Is what your ma told me to tell you. I got a video to send you, by the way. It's 4 hours long and called Poker Face. Spoiler warning, her face ain't all that gets poked. The audience was laughing outright now, with calls for ice and sarcastic pleads for mercy on behalf of the enraged gecko demon. Motherfucking. You catch on quick. Prick. Them's fightin' words. Anytime, anywhere, you shittlking flea baiter. Wanna joust? See what happens. Yeah. What happens? 3 things, I hit you, you hit the ground, I hit up your ma for Poker Face 2, the bigger, better sequel, and I ain't talkin' 'bout a video either. You're gonna have a fuzzy lil brother come Christmas. So, you gonna call or fold? I gotta get to it fast if you want your present on time. The peanut gallery roared with laughter, Poker Face growled and slammed down his cards. I call. 4 of a kind, 7 of hearts with a 10 of clubs kicker, the dealer announced. Husk sighed and slowly set down his cards, spreading them. Poker Face's eyes had lit up as he saw 4-7 of clubs get laid out before him. No doubt the smug number cruncher was calculating the long odds of him having a kicker higher than 10. Well, SHT. And here I thought 7 was a lucky number, Husk grumbled before looking up at Poker Face, a cold glint in his orange-on-black eyes, a flick of a claw revealed an ace of spades at the bottom of his hand. What a heartbreaker. The assembled gamblers and drunks exploded into cheers and applause. Money was passed about freely as someone had unsurprisingly started a pool on the game. Poker Face turned a deep furious shade of green as Husk reached across the table and scooped the whole pot over to his side. Well, gorsh, Pokey, Husk said, without so much as a hint of a slur in his voice. I guess poker just ain't your game, huh? Smug Sanuva, Poker Face roared and reached into his coat pocket, grabbing something small, rectangular, and made of seraphim steel. Then, he arrived. There was no sound, no door opening, no howl of the cheering crowd, not even ambient noise from the rest of the casino. Husk looked around, confused. Everyone was gone, not just the audience, but everyone else in the casino had disappeared, not even the canned music played over the speakers. A casino that had, not one moment before, been as bustling as any high-class joint ought to be was now completely empty and completely silent. Silent, save for a muted mechanical click followed by a slow hiss of air that emanated from directly behind him, breathing. Husk looked over at Poker Face, who was still there, but frozen like a deer in headlights. The only indicator of life were the rivulets of sweat that poured down his face. His expression that of sheer, unadulterated terror as he stared up at something standing behind Husk, something high over his head, something huge. Holy diver. He whimpered. The low, slow mechanical breathing sharpened somewhat at the utterance of his name. Poker Face gulped loudly and straightened his back like a soldier at attention. Excuse me. Holy diver, I was just. Husk was trying to wrap his head around exactly how the pronunciation between the two differed when Poker Face vanished. Husk had been around the block. He'd been in hell long enough to see all manner of teleportation, displacement, and magic whatsits to have a pretty good idea of when he was being spoofed. This was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It was like he was there one moment and then blip gone. No smoke, no portals, no incantations or demonic energy, not even the sound of moving air. He had simply disappeared. Husk. A voice from behind called his name. He didn't dare turn around to face it, for some hysterical, irresistible part of him screamed that, if he did, he would die right there and then. The voice was low, deep, but pleasant in its slightly reverberating timbre. He could practically feel it on his back. His hackles rose as Holy Diver drew closer, the oppressive aura, the sheer weight of his presence. It was like being slowly crushed by an oncoming glacier. A golden gauntleted hand the size of a dinner plate set down on his shoulder, eclipsing it entirely. Do you know who I am? Holy Diver said, his speech backdropped by the constant click and hiss of his breathing. Holy Diver, Husk stammered, well aware of how badly his aloof but persona was buckling, but he didn't care. He was going to die. Holy Diver laughed, a charming and surprisingly genuine sound. Sharp one, aren't you? No, just old enough to know better, Husk said, quietly. Look, if this is about the money, I am long past the point of caring about money, Husk, Holy Diver interrupted. No. Think of this as an aptitude test. You passed. I did. The hand patted his shoulder in a friendly, comforting fashion, those cruel-looking knuckle stubs glinting in the fluorescent light. Husk could practically hear the bones they had shattered, the flesh they had pulped. Indeed. It takes luck to successfully bluff Poker Face for so long, but it takes skill to get under his skin and make him lose his cool. To make him make a mistake. There was pause followed by a small, stifled chuckle. Ah. Poker Face. I value luck, Husk, but I treasure skill. A man with your savvy, your knowledge, your connections. You know everyone, Husk. Half of hell owes you money, and you owe money to the other half. Join me, and I'll settle your debts on both ends. Get me names, information, be my eyes and ears as only you can be. Help me, Husk, pledge your loyalty to me, and I can make you. Husk gasped as his hand was suddenly raised. In his hand was a royal flush. Royalty. I'll let you to think about it. The next instant he was gone and, like a flip had been switched, the patrons reappeared in an explosion of sound, the spectators cheered, the music blared, the slots rang and clamored, the clientele was blipped back into existence as abruptly as they had left. Husk pondered if someone had simply slipped something into his drink when he looked down at his hand. Sure enough, a royal flush sat in his paw. He looked up, Poker Face was nowhere to be seen. Husk recalled fleeing the Azathoth with his winnings and never looking back. He paid off his debts and endeavored to lay low for a while, a couple of centuries or so. After a while it seemed that Holy Diver had let him go, he probably found someone else to fill that role or something. Still, there were times that, when things went quiet, even for a second, he'd expect to feel that huge armored hand clamp down on his shoulder. He shuddered again, and that psycho put up with that terror for how long? No wonder he was trying to get out of hell, who would want to get caught up in all that bullshit? Husk. Charlie called out from down the hall, her chirpy voice a stiletto in his ears. Breakfast is ready. He slowly got to his feet and sniffed the air, sure enough the rich smoky smell of bacon hung heavy alongside the low sweetness of flapjacks. He knew that if anything would chase away this babblaz it was some nice salty bacon, a mountain of greasy eggs, and a nice hot cup of joe. And he had a new mug to break in. Perfect. Angeldust struggled to keep his smirk from blossoming into a full-blown grin. He had a lot of things to be happy about. He'd turned down that killer white Bastille was trying to shove down his throat, though the ensuing horror show probably meant he was a knife on sight for any of the big dealers in the West Side. That was less great, but if he was serious about all this rehab bullshit, it was probably for the best. And, to top it all off, pancakes. Di molto. Moi. He exclaimed around a syrupy mouthful. How do you make them so fluffy? Well, Kira began to say, before turning to Charlie, a smile on his face. Didn't do anything. Charlie made breakfast this time. Angel cooed in surprise as the goat bois gave impressed bleats and a round of applause. One flapjacks, Chuck, Husk mumbled from behind his coffee mug. Vaggie muttered something. Oh, please. I just did all the hands-on stuff. Kira walked me through the whole thing. See, you beat egg whites until they peak, then fold them into the batter. I was working under the MSTR chef, here, Charlie said, playfully punching Kira's shoulder, causing him to grunt and grimace. Oh. Sorry. It's all right, he said, rolling his shoulder. Just don't put salt in the eggs before they're cooked. They shared a laugh and Charlie continued talking about all the things he'd taught her in the kitchen. Angel could care less about what constitutes a dollop of cream fresh, even though it seemed to be a source of good-natured contention between the two. No, all that mattered to Angel was that it was bananas good when used to make scrambled eggs. Just then, between their comfortable banter, Angel looked up and saw a sight sweeter than the syrup on his light, fluffy pancakes, Vaggie glowering at the chef and his prodigy. Every time Charlie would smile at Kira, or touch his hand, or even so much as look at him, her eye would twitch. She was holding herself together well, but he could tell that she was reaching her limit. She'd obviously never liked the guy, probably something to do with him being a girl-murdering, hand-collecting serial killer, and last night's revelation certainly hadn't sweetened her opinion. All that was reasonable enough, but then add one Charlie to the mix and all the frustrated pining and ridiculous idolization that comes with her, and you've got yourself bag of cats and a bucket of water. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Not to say that Angel took any pleasure in Vaggie's suffering in particular, honestly, he actually kind of liked her. She was a square and grump, sure, but her salt offset Charlie's sugar in that peanut butter and chocolate kind of way that made this hotel hop like a Mexican jumping bean. But, on the other hand, well, Angel was an unabashed pot stirrer, and seeing Vaggie lose her cool was his favorite pastime. Sounds like the two AUs are making that kitchen work. Angel said, smirking at Vaggie from across the table. When the pots and pans are rockin', don't come a knockin'. She grit her teeth and set down her utensils. It really helps to have an extra pair while I'm, understaffed in that department, said Kira, flexing one hand and barely twitching the other. And Charlie's such an attentive set of hands. Cute ones, too, said Angel, winking at Vaggie. Better watch it around those knives though. Don't want to lose anything. Vaggie said, her tone withering. Silence fell over the table, the only sound was that of Husk disinterestedly chewing his bacon and slurping his coffee. Excuse me? Kira ventured, possibly in what he thought was a good-natured fashion. Yes, Charlie said, her expression that of mild confusion but her voice was gilded with tension. Excuse you? Upon hearing Charlie's somewhat disguised outrage, Vaggie shot to her feet, glaring at Kira before excusing herself in a huff. Watch your back with your kitchen buddy. Vaggie. Charlie got up and followed after her. Vaggie. Their argument faded away as they stormed off into the hotel, their heated voices overlapping and becoming indistinguishable noise. You're a real bee, you know that. Husk grunted at Angel, reaching over and shoveling Vaggie's unfinished breakfast onto his plate. What did I do? Angel said, faux scandalized, turning to Kira. Killer, did you hear me say anything bitchy? Well, you opened your mouth and then words came out, if that's what you mean. Ha! Husk barked. Get F for free, bug. Angel snorted and waved him off. Ouch, kitty, you're breaking my heart. Kira blinked, confused. Were you talking to me, or Husk? Angel laughed and winked at Husk. Nah, alls I ever call Husk is daddy. He gets right into it, rough like, makes me squeal. Ain't that right, daddy? That's right, I'm your daddy. Husk popped a piece of melon into his mouth. Angel, you're a constant source of shame and a disappointment to me and the family. Angel blinked in surprise, his smile fading. Heh, what? Husk adopted a crass Brooklyn accent and jabbed his fork at. Why can't you be more like your brother? He's out there pickin' locks and whackin' mix while you're eating PPS and slap pin PP. I come home with prick on your breath and tracks up your arms, it's killin' your mother. Husk, Angel snarled, his fist balled. This ain't funny. You're telling me, Husk said, flatly, examining his claws. Didn't even have to break out the big guns to wash the starch out of you. You hoot and snark like you've got nary a care, but you're F10 ply, bug. You wanna F with people and all the SHT they're going through. Fine. But don't unravel like a cheap sweater when someone finds your sore spot, bends you over the table and sticks it in. Play your kitty game somewhere else for this cardshark picks you out of his teeth. Yeah, F in. Angel lunged forward, only for Kira to grab him by the lower shoulder and haul him back. Angel spat and growled as he was pulled back, enraged. Alki pissant F. Husk nodded at Kira. Yeah, see, even the psycho knows better. Kira effortlessly pulled Angel back and out of the room, calling to the goat bois. Razzle, dazzle, could you please clear the table and wash the dishes when you're done? Bah, said Razzle. Bah, sighed Dazzle. Husk scoffed and reached over the table, grabbing Kira and Angel's unfinished breakfasts, scooping them onto his plate. Talk SHT, get hit, why little, PSH. He moved to stick his fork into the mountainous pile of scrambled eggs when Kira's hand appeared around an corner and flipped the SWCH, causing the eggs to explode in a small cracking pop, showering Husk with scrambled egg, bacon bits, and sticky, syrupy pancake crumbs. Oh, what the F. Kira smirked at Husk's roaring, garbled vitriol and turned back down the hall. Angel was braced against the wall, arms crossed tightly across his chest. Kira approached him, hand outstretched. Angel scoffed and slapped it away. PSS off. I don't need your f***ing pity. Kira smirked. Out of anyone in this hotel, I'm the least likely to pity you, Angel. Angel looked over at him, a forced smirk on his face. Yeah. Why? 'Cause you be my fiend. More that I'm a psychopath, said Kira, leading Angel down the hall. Pity isn't exactly my strong suit. Yeah, right. Angel said, walking alongside him. Kira looked over at Angel, who was quietly glaring off into the middle distance. Husk's words must have really stung, no doubt alluding to some truth. Bizarrely, Kira found himself pondering this uncouth, abrasive, overtly prurient demon's past. He spoke like an extra in a Cagney film and was very obviously a gangster or criminal in life. A flamboyantly gay man in a 1940s American crime syndicate, how well would that have gone over? Kira thought back to his own life, how his own parents doted on him, coddled him, and eventually even helped him cover up his murders. His father, Yoshihiro, even gave him his powers for this very purpose. What would he have done without their unwavering love? How far could he have gotten without their support? Angel had none of that. No support or approval from his people, his clan, no respect or regard, and certainly no love. Did he turn to DRGS because of it? His family had likely either disowned him or. A strange, heavy feeling blossomed in Kira's chest, a curious tightness that seemed to weigh him down and affect his breathing. What was it? Why was he feeling this way? Was he dying? Again? No. He thought back to earlier, to making breakfast. Was this what caring for others was like? Is this what normal people went through every day? He didn't want to think about that, he wanted it to go away. But how? Angel. He began to say before faltering. What? Angel turned to him, his expression flat and tired. He reached over and put a hand on his shoulder. I do consider you a friend. Angel looked confused for a moment before smiling. It was a small smile, unlike any of his other grins, smirks or otherwise self-satisfied simpers. Thanks, man. The smile lasted for a moment before Angel remembered himself and turned away, clearing his throat. Well, yeah. Of course you do. Lotta people would like to call me their buddy, you know. You're lucky I feel the same way, yeah. Oh yes, Kira said, smiling as he gestured at his various wounds. Very lucky. Angel laughed and clapped him on the back. SWHY I don't stick my neck out for anyone. Come on, let's head to the rec room. I got some bloodlust to vent. I can be my cheerleader. Sounds good to me, Kira said, following after. He felt better, lighter. Vaggie stormed into the main office with Charlie following closely after. She leaned up against the wall as Charlie slowly shut the door behind her, taking extra care to not slam it. Vaggie rolled her eye. Whenever she was annoyed, Charlie would make every effort to seem calm. She even knew exactly how she'd start off this little chat. So, what was that all about? So, said Charlie, turning around with a tight smile on her face. What was that all about? Exactly what it sounded like, Vaggie said, calmly. Vaggie, that was unfair, insensitive, inappropriate and very unprofessional. Charlie said. That man is a monster. Vaggie interjected. He's a murderer, Charlie. A killer. A hitman. He's our client. Charlie interrupted, pointing at Vaggie and then herself before gesturing at the room around them. This is a rehab clinic in hell. Who did you think we were going to rehabilitate? Vaggie threw up her arms. Prostitutes. Druggies. Thieves. Literally anyone but someone who kills for fun. How the F are we going to rehabilitate someone who'll kill us the second he feels like it? Maybe by not insulting him to his face, for starters. Charlie said. Maybe by showing a tiny bit of faith in me. In this hotel. Charlie. No one in hell or anywhere else has more faith in you than I do. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to help you with this? And you still don't think I can do it? You think I didn't hear him confess to being a serial killer, to being cleaner guy or whatever? Of course I know he's dangerous, I'm not stupid. But he's a client, he wants to move on, to get out, that means he wants to be better. Does it? Vaggie leaned in. Does it really? He wants out, sure, but how do you know he actually wants to be a better person? How do you even know he can be better? Charlie paused, her brow creasing. Because I have to. Because I believe that everyone who walks through those doors wants to be better. Because I believe that everyone down here has something good about them. If I didn't believe that from the bottom of my heart, I'd be exactly what everyone thinks I am, a stupid, spoiled, naive princess in way over her head. So, yes, I believe that he wants to be better, I believe that he can be better, and I know that we can help him. Not me, we, us. She reached out and grabbed Vaggie's hand, squeezing it tightly in both her hands. I need you, Vaggie. I need you to be with me on this. I need you to be what I can't be, I need your skepticism, I need your realism, I need you. But I need you to work with me. I know you think you're right and I know you're just doing what you feel is best, but if you really want to help me then I need you to trust me. Do you trust me? Vaggie met her gaze. Charlie, of course I trust you. If anyone can pull this whole thing off, it's you. I'm sorry, I know I haven't been the as helpful or professional as I could have been, it's just. Just what, Vaggie? Charlie pressed, stepping in. You need to tell me. Vaggie paused for a moment before hooking a hand around the back of Charlie's neck and pulling her in, pressing her lips against hers in a passionate kiss. Charlie's shoulders tensed for a moment before going slack, her hand reaching up tentatively settling on Vaggie's hip. Her lips were soft, warm, the taste of her was light and delicate, sweet in her mouth. Warmth passed between them, understanding, they lit up like a completed circuit, a surge of passion and energy flowed as they connected on this new, nth level. They broke the kiss, Vaggie sighed dreamily, gazing half-lidded into Charlie's eyes. Figured I should just show you. Charlie stared at her, surprise clear on her face. Vaggie? Vaggie's eyes snapped open in horror. What had she done? She stepped back, her hand to her mouth. Oh, my God. I am sorry, I thought. Charlie was on her in a flash, pulling her into another, deeper kiss. Charlie pressed forward, pushing Vaggie back against the desk. Vaggie squeaked in. Surprise before that familiar heat, that current passed between them, melting her resistance and surprise like ice in summer. Vaggie yielded to heat pressure, her passion, bunting her rear up onto the desk as Charlie leaned over her, her hands slipping up Charlie's back, clinging to her. Their lips opened and their tongues met, probing, caressing, playing. Charlie broke the kiss and smiled. I was just surprised. Now you know how I felt. Charlie, Vaggie stammered, still fresh off the rush. Shoo. She said, leaning back in. Trust me. Husk grunted, standing in the doorway. Coulda hung a sock on the doorknob or something. Vaggie and Charlie shot apart as though electrified, Charlie stammered and straightened her shirt. We were just. What the F is wrong with you? Vaggie snarled. Knock, but. Husk snorted and sidled in, followed shortly by the goat bois. Figured you were throwing a staff meeting. Though, from the look of it, staffs were the last thing on your minds. Charlie straightened out her tie and huffed, a healthy flush outlining the red spots on her cheeks. Vaggie's right, you should have knocked. Because you two were about to F in a public office? Husk said, smirking. You're right. How inconsiderate of me. Charlie cleared her throat awkwardly as Vaggie buried her face in her hands. Why did you think we were having a meeting? Husk shrugged. Call it intuition. Call it our friendly neighborhood serial killer just exploded my breakfast in my face. Is that what all that stuff in your fur is? Husk grunted an affirmative and flicked a wad of scrambled egg off of his chest. Figured you two would have a row about whether or not to curb him. Also figured that, as staff, maybe me and the boys ought to be a part of that conversation. We're in danger too, after all. Charlie sighed and nodded. You're right, I should have included you in the meeting. It was supposed to be a meeting, we just don't care, Husk snorted, waving her off. Let's narrow it down, yeah. What we have on our hands here is a dangerous superpowered psychopath with no particular aversion to killing and maiming. He's admitted to enjoying it, even. He's a stone-cold mob hitman and he doesn't seem to care who he kills or who gets killed so long as he's safe, DRG-fueled babble notwithstanding. To make matters worse, he's now the target of a gang of dangerous superpowered psychopaths who will kill everyone who's ever laid eyes on the BSTRD to keep their secret weapon secret. That about sum it up. Charlie opened her mouth to retort before pausing and nodding in defeat. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Also, he's an arrogant, misogynistic butt. Vaggie added. You say that like it's a bad thing, Chica, Husk laughed. You're being unfair. Charlie exclaimed. He's not all bad. Name one good thing about him. Vaggie said, crossing her arms. She can name 6, Husk chuckled, gesturing at his belly. Ugh. Thank you. Vaggie said. I almost had to throw a towel over them so Charlie be able to string words together, it was like waving Milkbone in front of a hungry dog. Charlie gasped sharply, affronted. What? No. Come on, Chuck. Even I was staring. Razzle held a washboard out on his tummy and rasped his hooves on it while wagging his eyebrows seductively. Dazzle wore a mop on his head roughly resembling Charlie's hair. He swooned and loosed a bubbly, high-pitched bleat. Charlie tried to be offended but wound up chuckling despite herself. Okay, not even his nicest feature, while we're on the subject. Tell me about it, Husk said, chuckling. Did ya see legs go up and made a complete butt of themselves? Can we focus? Vaggie exclaimed. Charlie. Yeah, he's hot. I get it. I'm gay, not blind. But even Husk agrees that we can't keep him here. I get that you want to help him, and I know that a time will come when we'll have to try and redeem people like him. But him specifically, he can't stay here. He's a danger to everyone in the hotel, both him and his friends. He has to go. Now, Vaggie, Husk said, patting Charlie on the shoulder. Don't go putting words in my mouth. What? Yeah, what? Charlie said, confused. Husk rolled his eyes and sighed. Him being him, and his buddies being who they are, that's exactly why we can't turn him loose. Think about it. Their boss is back and looking to clear out 3 years' worth of squatters on his property. We kick him out and he goes back to being Mr. Clean, and that's thousands, tens of thousands of people who are going to die. A gang war unlike any we've seen in decades, and he's going to be the right hand of the worst slaughter this side of a culling. We let him go, we may as well be slitting their throats ourselves. Okay, I didn't consider that. Vaggie sighed and folded her arms, looking over at Razzle and Dazzle. What about you two? Thoughts? Razzle burped loudly and Dazzle patted his tummy, licking his lips. Figures. Vaggie rolled her eye and shook her head. Okay, he stays. So, what now? What we were going to do, silly. We're going to help him. She reached out and took Vaggie's hand in hers, pulling her close. Together. Vaggie smiled and threw her arms around Charlie, hugging her tightly. Husk rolled his eyes and scoffed. In hell. Green armored gauntlets grabbed an imp by the throat before tearing its torso in half like a phone book, its pulverized remains unleashing a torrent of glowing pellets. He whirled about and unloaded both barrels into another roaring hellion, reducing its body to a quivering lump of gore. Gitsuum. Angel cackled, the controller in his hands clicking as he whirled about. Groovy. I think that's another game, said Kira, flinching as the player character tore off a horn and stabbed its owner with it. Is this what games are like up there nowadays? Whatever happened to the Mario Brothers? One cut his throat shaven and the other fell down an elevator, Angel said, not looking away from the screen. Onto some bullets. Terrible accident. Sad, really. What? Ya asked me about the Mario Brothers. Rumor was they were rats, but turns out it was Rick Giuseppe. Too bad they had such terrible accidents, they made good cannoli. Huh, muttered Kira, watching the horror unfold on screen, the high notes of gunfire underscored by low, gruesome crunches of meat and cartilage. Can you imagine if this guy showed up here? Angel chirped. Your funeral. Would he be able to kill us? I mean, he can off these dipshits but they're all, meaty. Kira tapped his chin, contemplating. He's empowered by Seraphim, right? That's why he can get health and ammo from killing. Where did it say that? The codices. Ugh. Well, their Seraphim ain't our Seraphim. Semantics. Says the guy that actually read the codexes in Doom. Codices. F off. Kira chuckled and pat Angel on the shoulder. Don't worry, if he ever turns up here, I protect you, Berserk Sphere. I see it, Angel said, licking his lips. Get ready for some real SHT. A long string of horrifying noises ensued, Kira grimaced and shifted uncomfortably. You know what, never mind. You're on your own. Woof. Angel chuckled. Felt that, did ya? Kira hissed through his teeth and shook his head. More that it just brings back bad memories. Oh. Angel cocked an eyebrow and glanced at him. Back when you dusted folk for the big man? Saw some SHT, yeah. Kira nodded, pointing at the screen. Holy Diver's fighting style really isn't all that different from this. Gentlemen's. Neither are the results, really. Angel paused the game and turned to Kira. He really scares ya, doesn't he? He'd scare you if you knew any better, said Kira, staring at his good hand. Well. Angel said, making himself comfortable. Why don't you educate me? Tell me why he scares you so bad. That goes back to when we first met, Kira said, with a sigh. Or, rather, when I first arrived in hell. The hands. Those horrible, awful hands. They pulled him apart, him and his stand, Killer Queen. The pieces were passed back through the throng, he could see bits and pieces being dropped, being lost, others still were clustered together and separated and taken elsewhere, never to be seen again. He saw a main mass being assembled in a long line, at one end was his head and at the other was a burning, screaming ring of light, the pieces being passed along and tossed in like coal into the boiler of some infernal steamliner. He drew closer, and closer, and closer, he could feel the heat on his face now, hear his pieces crackle and hiss as they passed through the maw. He whimpered and shook his head, neck stump wiggling pathetically as he tried in vain to pull away. He managed a squeak of horror when his head was finally hurled into the roaring portal. His head tumbled through the blinding void, the heat scorched the hair from his head and blackened his skin. His smoldering, sizzling head plummeted ever downwards before thudding into a pool of viscous, molten light with a rich splat. He sunk slowly into the thick, burning liquid, tongues of flame crawling up his face as did. Fully submerged he felt the flesh of his face melt and slew away, his eyes bubbled in their sockets and evaporated. The terrible burning agony tore a high, horrible sound from him, beyond anything he could ever imagine coming from a human being. The molten substance poured into his open, screaming mouth, the heat from within met the heat from without as he felt himself melt and spread out within the light. The last vestiges of his old body evanesced within the light. Utter obliteration. Yeah, that part's a B, ain't it? Shoo. His consciousness spread out across the all-encompassing molten mass, consumed with pain and terror, a bodiless mass of frenzied thoughts and memories. Instincts took hold, his mind scrambled with no limbs, thrashed with no body, desperate to escape. At the peak of his despair he felt something again, something besides pain. Something was moving through the thick, liquid medium, something that moved when he willed it, a limb of some kind. He latched onto the sensation with a wretched, animalistic desperation, his vast well of willpower focusing solely on this new sensation. Something was growing, coalescing, a rough approximation of form, something solid conjured from the liquid fire. Arms, legs, a body, a head, all strange and unfamiliar. He knew, somehow, that this body was manifested by his will, his desperation, his instincts, and it would be his salvation. He imbued himself into this form, wriggling into it like a suit that was several sizes too small. The body thrashed and struggled, his panicked frenzied motions slowly become more and more controlled and deliberate as his soul settled into this strange new flesh. He kicked his legs and paddled with his arms, reassured by the feeling of the thick liquid rushing over his body. He was moving. Up. Up. Swim up. He was compelled to swim. He had no way of knowing which way was up, but knew nonetheless. His pace quickened as he drew closer, closer, compelled by some force deep within the center of his soul. He burst from the surface and tried to take the first breath in what felt like years, but his lungs and throat were filled to the brim with the thick, molten liquid. He felt himself drawn upwards out of the pool, blood rushed to his head as though he were hanging upside down. He fell up and out, blind from a thick film of the stuff still clinging to his body. Utterly disoriented, he tumbled through the air. He recalled that skydivers in spins would try to make an X with their limbs as symmetrically as possible to control their descent. The tumbling stopped and he managed to flip over onto his belly. The roaring wind tore over him, peeling the sticky film from his body in viscous rivulets. He opened his new eyes for the first time and tried to gasp. He was plummeting through the sky hundreds of meters above a massive city. It sprawled out in all directions, its lurid red glow flickered in the horizon, backdropped by an abyssal, starless sky. He looked down, eyes widening as the cityscape drew closer and closer. A sector, a neighborhood, a block, a street, and finally, a single car at the head of what appeared to be a caravan. He squeezed his eyes shut and braced for impact. Pain exploded in a flash, consuming his entire body. Flesh ruptured, bones shattered, metal crumpled and brakes squealed. His shattered body was flung from the destroyed hood of a limousine. He twitched on the ground and gagged, the glowing liquid pouring from his wounds. The second the liquid touched air it evaporated in a shimmering cloud, leaving no trace of an injury behind. Bones knit together and joints popped back into place. A few seconds later and he was completely healed. "Oh, what the F?" a voice bellowed. "Watch where you're falling, but..." The newly born demon rolled onto his hands and knees, looking up at the car blearily, confused. Standing on either side of the car were hideously malformed monsters. One was a tall, black dogman dressed up in some ridiculously overwrought zoot suit while the other appeared to be a metallic Hell's Angel with a V8 motor block instead of a head. "Top Gear, you got this?" the dogman said, gesturing at the ruined hood. Top Gear nodded his engine head. "Yeah, it's nothing. Take care of the pavement diver, Anubis." Anubis grinned, exposing a mouthful of fangs. Yeah. "Hey, holy diver, this'll just be a minute." He started towards him, drawing a long scimitar from a scabbard on his back. "Man, I don't know what kind of fun you were having before, jumping out a window naked as a jaybird, but you done landed on the wrong car." He opened his mouth to speak and a torrent of glowing yellow liquid poured out onto the pavement. He doubled over and vomited a seemingly endless volume of the stuff, emptying his stomach and lungs. "Oh ho! A newbie. See that, Top Gear? We got us a fresh-baked demon over here." Anubis stood over him, notching his blade under the panther demon's chin and raising his gaze to meet his. "What's your name, PP?" "KLRKLEan. He gurgled, glaring up at the grinning dog. Clean. Anubis sneered. What kinda name is Clean? Mr. Clean sure left AF mess on this hood. Top Gear growled, setting his hands on the crumpled metal. It glowed and the steel groaned and popped as it slowly returned to its former shape. Gonna have to take it to the wash. Hear that? Anubis said. Boss'll be late for the opera now. Can't show up with your gunk all over his hood, what would the other bosses say? Nothing personal, but I'm gonna have to give you a bit of a slap on the wrist. He raised his sword over his head, leering down at the naked panther demon. Hope you enjoyed your stay in hell, Mr. Clean. It's Kira, actually. He reached out and grabbed Anubis's ankle with his right hand. What the? Anubis grunted before bloating hideously for a moment, fire and smoke bursting from his shattering body, and then he was gone, his sword clattered to the ground. Top Gear gawped as Kira slowly rose to his feet, looking at his new hands in horror. Kira reached up and felt his face, his snout, the fur, his teeth. He tugged a strand of his blonde hair and examined it, a look of flat distaste on his face. Two more demons burst from the limousine and rushed at him, spears and swords drawn. Kira sidestepped one and unleashed a rush of punches into the side of his head, decapitating him in a cloud of gore. The other skidded to a stop on his heels, eyes wide. Kira advanced on the terrified demon, who held out a trembling spear. Kira reached out and poked the side of the spear tip. The demon screamed and spasmed as his body was racked with destructive power. Orange blossoms of energy sprung up all over his body, leaving gray patches of smoldering ash in their wake. The spear fell from his hands as they turned to dust and blew away in the wind, his screams of agony winding down as more and more of his body succumbed. They eventually stopped when his knees evaporated and he keeled over forwards, crumbling into a pile of dust before disappearing entirely. Kira walked over to the blood-splattered limo. Top Gear stammered in terror and backed away, eyes wide and pistons trembling. Kira examined himself in the passenger side mirror, a pink panther with blonde hair. Why would something covered in fur have hair? The incongruity was making him anxious. Where was he? What was this place? Movement out of the corner of his eye drew his attention. He ducked a swipe from a skull-faced demon with flowing brown hair. The demon's left arm ended at the wrist, no hand, but when his swipe missed and slashed at the side mirror there was a strange bass sound and the mirror simply ceased to exist. Spatial destruction. Kira thought. Just like Okuyasu. Who? Shush. The skull demon balled his right hand into a fist, squeezing so tightly his knuckles popped. Harder and harder he squeezed until his right fist collapsed into itself with a low, buzzing thrum, creating a void at the end of his wrist. He swiped again and Kira leapt up onto the roof of the car, the demon's void hands effortlessly tearing long gashes into the door. He looked around from atop the roof and saw a long line of stopped vehicles, a veritable army of demons now converging on the limo, all armed with some manner of weapon. Kira raised his left hand and prepared to deploy sheer heart attack when all the demons stopped dead in their tracks, awe and terror clear on their hideous faces. Kira felt the steel roof behind him buck as a massive weight set down. He began to turn around when his body suddenly crumpled in a sickeningly familiar way, as though under the force of 1,000 simultaneous blows. He was sent flying backwards through the air at tremendous speed, BLD trailing in the air behind him from a dozen ruptures. He saw an enormous figure standing on the roof where he had been standing an instant before, its fist extended. Terror and fury blazed in him as he flew through the air. It couldn't be. It couldn't be him. The figure blinked out of existence. At the same time an armored fist the size of a basketball slammed into his ribs at bullet speeds, crushing them utterly. He smashed into an adjacent car with enough force to crush it like an aluminum can and send it skidding up onto the sidewalk. Inside the collapsed ruin of metal and glass, Kira barely clung to consciousness, his vision going dark as massive hands pulled the warped steel apart like paper. The next instant Kira found himself skidding across the pavement in front of the limousine, his body a screaming mosaic of agony as contusions, lacerations, and shattered bones each sang their own song of pain. He turned over onto his back and glared up at the massive demon. He was huge, 10 feet tall at least, his bulging muscular body was gleaming platinum, covered in polished gold armor with cog-shaped pauldrons. On his chest plate was a raised, jade-green heart. His head crowned with a savage mane of shining golden hair that reached over his shoulders and down his mid-back. His face was that of an unnaturally appealing man with alabaster skin and red gear-shaped pupils. Sprouting from his cheeks were metallic articulated tubes that wrapped around and connected to the back of his shoulders. As he drew closer, Kira could hear the regular, mechanical hiss of air that was his breathing. Is it you?" Kira sputtered, a clot of blood spraying from his mouth as he spoke. "Jotaro Kujo." So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author WriteAnon on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.